Hello, everybody. How are you? I am so happy that you decided to join us this evening. So, I have with me a wonderful, wonderful um, educator, and he's going to share with us just some of his experiences. So, tonight we're going to talk about how are our children doing emotionally and academically. But before we get started, I wanted to share with you an event that's coming up where I'm involved. And I wanted you to know that I'm so excited to be with some other amazing authors. And so we are sponsoring a workshop, and it's going to be on IG Live. And the title is I See Me in Books. And we'll be talking about the impact of diverse characters. And so we all have books with very diverse characters, and we'll be talking about that. So we invite you, your families, your children, anybody that's interested in children's books. And this is a part of us celebrating Black Children's Book Week. And so we're a part of that. And we are so happy. So please join us with my author friends, Charmaine Perry Knight and Shayla McGee. And again, the title is I See Me in Books, the Impact of Diverse Characters. And it is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be on IG Live. And we hoped that you will be there participating in this discussion. So welcome, Darius. So happy to have you here tonight.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. I'm very blessed and fortunate to be here with you too. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It's truly a blessing. Thank you.
So I just want you to know that Darius is a part of our community. He is in support for children in trauma. And we're so happy that this is not the first time he's been on. He's been on before, and we're so happy to have him. He talked about mental health before. So First of all, Darius, I want you to describe or to just tell us about yourself. I think you can do it better than I can.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Where do I start? I guess with the obvious. I've been teaching for 11 years this year. I've had a wide, very fortunate and to start teaching right at the bat when I was 18, full-time graduate student, full-time teacher. I've taught birth to 5. I did that for 6 years, lead infant teacher for 2. I was very fortunate to work and go to school at University of Georgia, where I matriculated through their undergrad and graduate programs for 10 years, taught there for 6. Birth to 5 or 10 years. I was lead infant teacher for 2. Came out of that, went back home to Clayton County, Georgia, where I met your wonderful niece, Nicole, at Anderson, where I taught pre-K for a year. After that, I've taught every grade since then, except for kindergarten and 3rd. I've taught 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th is my favorite. I've been in 5th grade for 3 years. Currently teaching 4th and 5th grade. It's a combined class at a private school in Lower Manhattan. Just moved to New York 9 months ago to start my PhD in English education at Teachers College, Columbia University. Shout out to Dr. Celia Ruiz and Dr. Marcel Mentor, who are my wonderful advisors and just helped me through this whole big transition. But that's where I am right now. I'm just very fortunate to also be a educational consultant and tutor at a company based in Korea and New York called Active Education, part-time. And in my free time, which is rare these days, I am just recently started an adjunct instructor job at CUNY, Queens College, for student teaching for English teachers grades 7th through 12th this past January.
Wow, you are really busy. But I know we have one thing in common. I used to be a 5th grade teacher one time in my life. So
really? Okay.
Absolutely. So tonight topic is how are children doing emotionally and academically? So I'd like for you to tell us, you've been teaching through this pandemic, you've been with children, and tell us, how are children doing now emotionally, pre-pandemic, and now that we're hopefully on our way out of the pandemic?
Right. It's funny that we're doing this because I remember last time we talked, I was just started teaching a new job. It was 5th grade gifted. I was in Dunwoody, Georgia. That was right in the midst of the pandemic. I hadn't met those kids, and we were virtual the entire time. So just seeing now that I am very fortunate to be face to face and hybrid if there's a case in my classroom or whatnot. Um, just really thinking about the differences, I feel like kids have been through so much in the last two, almost 3 years. It's they're carrying so much more baggage, not only emotionally, but that shows academically. We thought kids were behind before. There's always this talk about bridging the gap. And personally, I feel like that needs to just dissipate and just learn to really meet these kids where they're at, accept them for where they're at. It's like a relationship. You accept the good and the bad if you love this person. And, because I generally love my kids like they're my own,
Right.
I feel like every teacher needs to take that stance and just really be like, okay, I'm going to stop focusing so heavy on the data and how can I get these kids to express this trauma, this hurt, this pain, or whatever emotion that they don't know how to put a name to yet that's balled up inside. That's one thing I've noticed academically and emotionally between the 2.5 years of the pandemic, that it's hitting heavier now because the further we go along into this pandemic, the more loss is happening, the more that things are changing. There's a different variant every day, the mask mandate, so much is happening. So it's affecting these kids, and I don't think many people are taking the time to really sit back and be reflective and look at, okay, I know I still got to teach this standard and do follow this curriculum map, but my kids are not there. Like I have a fourth and fifth grade class combined, but a lot of my fourth graders are not even on fourth grade level. They're second, beginning of third, just because of, not because of the gap, but just because that real life is happening and it's not where the child can focus on academics. So many different factors coming into play. And I feel like a lot of teachers are just so focused on, I gotta bridge this gap. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm like, I've got to help this kid. I don't care about bridging the gap. This child needs to feel safe.
Right.
And I feel like for people of color, students that are minorities, we will never truly feel safe. But I feel like I want to make myself and the rest of the kids in the class feel brave enough to share their experiences, whether positive or negative, and feel supported enough to share that. That's what's happening academically and emotionally. It's just we're at a different dynamic than I think the world has ever seen. And I feel like the face of education really needs to change and just, all need to take a step back and reevaluate and just push all the stuff we've been doing aside.
Right.
And really truly look at this as a rebirth and be willing to start anew. That's something that I do personally every year. It's just, okay, I'm starting over every year. But really with the pandemic, I feel like I've been starting over every day because the child doesn't come, different kids come to school every day. You may be good one week and then something happens and you're right back at square one. I'm having to unpack and excavate what we've worked through for the past 4 or 5 months.
Right. And, I know a lot of children have gone through a lot of grief during this time. They've lost friends, they've lost relatives, they've lost grandparents, and some of them have even lost parents. So what kinds of changes in their behavior are you seeing?
It feels weird even saying this, just being 29, turning 30 this year. I was just about to say back in the day, but it feels like I've been teaching that long.
I'll be saying that back in the day.
Right. But I feel like back in the day, and for me, that's thinking back like 2013, kids were acting out emotionally, like screaming in anger, but now it's just like they don't even do that. They just shut down. They're tired. We're all tired. And I think many people don't realize that, we may show up and shout every day. You may not notice it, like, oh, he's killing it. He's doing this in the classroom. They don't realize, for me personally, it's like I'm having to push myself to do that because there were some days where I used to get up out of bed like, oh, I'm going to go teach, going to be with my kids. Whatever stuff is on the side, let it go. Things are so heavy these days. It's just like putting one foot in front of the other has become a mundane task that even the kids are struggling with. You see it in their body language. You see it in the way they carry themselves. And one thing for me is just, I want my kids to learn how to amplify their voice because I tell them every day, you're a gift to this world. No matter if no one else tells you that for the rest of your life, I tell them 2 things before they enter and before they exit. I love you. That's unconditionally. And you're a gift to this world because that's what they need to hear now more than ever. Because that's some things I feel like I need to hear every day because every day is not easy. And, as educators, I feel like we're the ones who are gifted to this world to carry heavier burdens than some other people do. You're carrying the weight of your kids and your school with you. And it gets heavy, but I try to give that love to my kids because I know that they'll give it back genuinely when they feel that rapport.
And I think that's really important, especially as we're dealing with kids going through so much trauma. We know that kids were going through anxiety and depression way before the
Right.
pandemic. And we know that
Hmm.
those numbers and the research tells us that those
Hmm.
numbers were going up, but we know now that it's even more, and especially kids going through depression. And so we really
Yeah.
have to support them.
And I think
Definitely
being
have to.
vulnerable is the key. That's, you mentioned depression. That's something that runs in my family. Mental health runs
Mhm,
in my family. I've suffered with depression for 22 years.
mhm,
Um, something I had to come to terms with. It started when I was 7. Just, a big dynamic change in my life that triggered it. And it's something I deal with every day. And because I have it and I've learned, strategies to cope with it through therapy and identifying it. But to relate to kids these days, what triggered me to seek help was the biggest breakdown I've ever had in my life was losing my grandfather in 2013, who was like my father figure. He was my grandfather, my best friend, my everything. Um, I was raised in a single parent home by my mom, who was amazing. He was the best person on this earth, in my opinion. But
right.
my grandparents helped raise me, and losing my grandfather in 2013 and my grandmother in 2013 really changed the trajectory of who I was and who I am today. It's not the same person that was present 9 years ago. It's heavy, and you see that in your kids. It's the glossy-eyed stare, where they're staring out the window all day, or it comes through in their writing.
Mhm.
And you really have to be cognizant of that and pick up on the small things because they do lead to bigger things if you don't address it.
Absolutely.
They're trying to find a way to express themselves. And for me, I'm very thankful to have done, the TED Talk we talked about earlier. That was my way of um, healing with my grandfather's death. When I did that in 2017, not knowing my grandmother would pass 4 months later, I
Mhm,
did that talk trying to release my grief, my bottled up emotions, because I'm always the strong one. I'm always the one holding everyone else down.
mhm,
So I
mhm.
always hold my own stuff in to help other people. But that was my way of letting that out. But that for me was an outlet because that was my first time ever doing spoken word poetry. I used to write poetry and just keep it to myself. But when
Mhm.
I did that talk, that inspired me to write more and to share my stories, which led to me pursuing this PhD in English education in Columbia and focusing on poetry as an outlet. Like right now, I'm focusing on my dissertation, which is 3 years off, but just starting on like Black boy trauma and also Black boy joy, because we're not taught as a society to express feelings of joy with minorities. I used to work at Title I school, Clayton County, for
Mhm.
4 years. Everything is so heavy and so intricate. We're always stereotyped, and that's my way. What I've learned this year, specifically moving to a new state and being involved with a private school for the first time in 11 years, and having a different kind of kids in my life. I still want to use narrative writing or writing period, whether it be poetry, as an outlet to express that for kids because they need that more than ever to just express whatever is being held inside. And we have to learn to appreciate that. It may come off dark. I had a kid write a poem about murder. Thankfully, she was talking about murdering her emotions, her dark
Mhm.
emotions. But I
Mhm.
had to learn to be receptive of that because she was like, I'm going to write about murder. And I was like, I need to
Ooh.
call somebody. This is like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you have to really create that space where they can talk about these things, but allow them to explain fully without jumping the gun because we are dealing with things that are so heavy and dark and twisted. So sometimes the kid's writing is going to reflect that. I mean, look at what's going on right now with the world. You got to
Absolutely.
be, you got to be more, you got to really take a step back, which is hard because we are so invested in our kids and our populations. But you got to take a step back and view things more perceptively.
Absolutely. And Darius, that's why I wrote, 2 books about dealing with
Yes, yes, yes.
social emotional learning,
Which,
about COVID and how kids were feeling, and then still how
mhm,
kids are feeling now. And kids are feeling better, but we still have some issues, just as you said, that we're dealing with. So I'll be
right.
publishing a journal very
Oh,
soon.
wow.
And this journal, I had a group of wonderful children ages 7 to 11 to
Mhm.
actually be my review team and tell me
Oh,
and go
wow.
through it, and just like a little research team, and
Mhm,
go through it and say it, we like this question, we didn't like this question, and just
mhm.
wonderfully, because I thought that was important, because
Yeah,
kids
absolutely.
need an outlet, whether it's the
Mhm,
pandemic or whether it's
right.
a flood or whether it's a hurricane or whatever it is.
Mhm,
We know that there's definitely something else, that once we get through the pandemic, there'll be something else. We're always going to have
right.
that. We're always going to have the mental illness piece. We're always going to have things that happen in people's lives that are, that change them or brings
Right.
change to their lives. So
And I love
definitely,
that you utilize the voices, just to have the opportunity to
yes.
share their voices and to be like, my voice matters. That alone speaks volumes. So thank you for doing
Oh,
that.
yeah, I really am into kids being able to express themselves, because so much
Mhm.
of what we do is about meeting the adult needs, and we have to meet
Yes.
the child's need. And so
Mhm.
whether it's, taking that time and saying, we're going to put academics aside for today, and this is what we have to deal with because Johnny had a loss, over the weekend.
Right.
And everybody
Mhm.
that's, in the class may be a part of Johnny's community. And so
Right.
they're also feeling, maybe they're not feeling Johnny's exact loss, but every time you lose someone, then you go back to someone else that you love, that you lost. And it's
Mhm.
a replay.
That right there speaks volumes for me, because for me, one thing I'm learning now is that grief brought me back to the kids that I lost with
Mhm.
depression. Losing my grandfather, the healing through that brought me back to the 7-year-old boy that I pushed aside for 22 years. But I love what you said about the community thing. That's one thing I tell my kids. We are a family. In the day, we're not perfect. We are not a well put together puzzle. And we're all jigsaw pieces. We don't match. But we're gonna make it
Right.
work however we see fit. But in the day that there is a bond with love that cannot be broken. And I love what you said, because that's one thing I think educators need to focus more on now. And that's one reason why I love your books. They're on the shelf in my classroom. It's the social emotional aspect and showing, especially with literature, kids have to relate to that and they have to be able to connect with that and see, Dr. Foley wrote about this. That's what's going on in my life. I can relate to this. It's the
Mhm.
same thing with grief. Advocate, because when you said that, I thought about a child who just lost two uncles back to back, was at a
Mhm.
funeral on Friday. I don't hide that from my kids. I tell them, this is why they're out. They're dealing with a family issue. They want to address it on Monday when they come back. We will
Mhm.
create the space to do that. But no matter whether they want to share or not, we have to love and support each other, because we need that now more than ever. And that's where that community aspect, that family feel comes in at. We're not perfect. Every day is different,
Right.
but we're going to disagree. We're going to clash, but we have to come back to that love at the end of the day. And that's, that breaks barriers. It does. It really does.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that we do address that, because you know what?
Hmm.
It's going to happen and we have to. And I'm so glad that you are honest with your children, because that's so
Yes.
important. And we have to let them
Yes.
know that we're human. You know,
Hmm.
I
Yes.
remember when I was teaching and I would see kids at the grocery store and they're like, "You go to the grocery store?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." I'm a person. Because sometimes they don't think of us as people. They think I don't know
Hmm.
what they think we are, but yeah, we're people. We go to the
Right.
movie. We do
Right.
all of those things that you do. And so I think
Hmm.
that's, the honesty. They will
Hmm.
forever thank you and be
Oh,
appreciative.
thank you.
Definitely,
Thank you.
because I've had kids come back and call me out of the clear blue sky and say, thank you for, you did this. And
Yeah.
I'm like, trying to remember who are you? And they gave me
Right.
examples of things. So it's really
They're
humbling.
watching you. It's things that you do that you may not
Yes,
notice. Just the little things that come back. And they're like, you that day I was having a rough day. You gave me a hug, or you said I love you.
right.
And it's 5, 6 years later. That is what they remember, and that's the reason why we do what we do.
Definitely. So as you talk to parents, and we have a lot of parents and grandparents and foster parents and doctors and all kind of people in our group, please
Mhm.
share what are some things that you think parents and grandparents and
Yeah.
foster parents and everybody that parents can do to support the children that you're saying that are having issues
Mhm.
emotionally and academically.
I think for the most important thing first is just to appreciate and love who they are, whether it's today or tomorrow. That can change within the span of 24 hours with kids. Um, be willing to and let them know that you're there for them every step of the way. That is not going to be easy, but just reassuring that they have some kind of safety net. And I thought that's what's needed more than ever. Like you said before, many grandparents are now raising kids. I was fortunate to grow up in a household where my mom was very active, but with the help of her parents, who were my grandparents, one of the grandparents I ever knew. So that's changing now. Family trajectories, dynamics are changing. You never know who's raising who or who's not raising who.
Mhm.
So I think it's just really trying to be honest with your children, and no matter what format that you have them, and just expressing that. And I think being honest is key. That honesty hurts a lot. We're adults, it hurts a lot, but you have to let your kids know that it's gonna hurt. Prepare them, don't scare them, but let them know that it's not gonna be easy. But in the day that we are together, and that's what matters, we have each other, no matter what that looks like. Because so many
Wow.
people these days are alone. And that, having someone is just a rarity these days. So it's you know, expressing that and gratitude and
Yeah.
bonding in that.
And that's powerful, definitely. And so that's why, when I talk about um, the IG live that, my fellow authors and I'll be doing, I See Me in Books, because we know it's important that
Mhm,
kids see someone that they look like in books.
mhm.
As a child, I didn't see a lot, I'm a much, much,
Uh,
much older. So I didn't see a lot of me in any book, and
mhm.
so I grew up in a totally different time. So I know how important it is. So just want to remind people about the impact of diverse characters, and that will be on March 3rd, Thursday, March 3rd at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on IG Live. I also just want to take the opportunity to remind you that we have the journal, Exploring My Emotions, a 45-day journal for elementary school age children that is now available for pre-order. So that means that you're not going to get it right away because it hasn't been published yet, but it is available for pre-order at cassiesbigchange.com. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Darius, for your time, for your
Thank
honesty,
you.
for your sharing, because it's so important that parents and everybody, because we're all going through something, we're all going through collective trauma. I tell people, they say, well, some people, I said, no, all of us, because we are all affected by what's going on in the world. We
Mhm.
can't help it.
Absolutely.
We can't help but be affected, whether we're wearing masks or whether we have to limit where we go, uh,
Mhm.
limit our travels, all of that. So I thank you so much for your time, for your honesty. And I thank you so much as a teacher for what you're doing and giving to children, because I know teaching is exhausting. And I
Yeah.
know teaching in this time is very exhausting. So I commend
Mhm.
you and all the teachers out there that are pouring
Thank
themselves
you.
out, that are
Thank you.
helping, that are trying to address this emotional gap and this academic gap. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. And to thank the parents who are doing the
Yes.
same thing, because it's tough
Mhm.
out there for everybody. Groceries are going up. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Just
Right.
trying to support your family, support
Mhm.
what you're doing. So thank you for what you do. And again, thank you so much. So this ends
Thank you.
our conversation this evening, and we just appreciate everybody that's joined us. And just know that this will be eventually on the YouTube Education for All Now YouTube channel. So when you go on, please like, share, and hit that bell. All right. Thanks again. Have a
Yeah.
good
Thank you. Thank you. You as well.